Thank you for your music. It's always amazing to see our young people as they share their talent. And I think the music has power, right? The power to penetrate our hearts, to feel the presence of God more. So thank you. They sang first and second service, so they sang twice. And I listened to both, and just amazing. I'm blessed with that. So Memorial Day weekend. When I came to United States first time, I heard Memorial Day weekend. I had no idea what it means, so I thought it was just a long weekend that I can kind of enjoy. Later, I understood what it means, what it really means for us, right? And I just like to thank you for, if you have any service members in the armed forces, or if they are deployed wherever they are, if you have anyone, or if you were the veteran who served, I just want to say thank you for your service. Furthermore, it's just a little personal. If you are from, I'm going to read the list of the countries, and if you are from this country, just shortly raise your hand. I would like to see you if you are from there or not. But citizens of the United States of America. All right, we have a lot. England, we have anyone from Great Britain? Netherlands. Canada? Anyone from Canada? Okay. France? Okay. New Zealand. Philippines. Turkey? Thailand? Anyone from Thailand? South Africa? Greece? Belgium? Ethiopia? Here we have Ethiopia. Colombia? Sweden? India? Denmark? Norway? Italy? Jamaica? A few hands over there. Mexico? Argentina? We used to have Mobby here. But I want to say thank you for all of you. It's because without your support, I wouldn't be here today. These are the nations came to Korea in 1950s and fought Korean War. And without your sacrifice, me and my wife, my family, we wouldn't be here. So I just like to thank you. Thank you for your sacrifices. And I hear from the United States. United States deployed 480,000 troops to South Korea. Out of that, 30,000 troops were killed. And more than 100,000 soldiers were injured. And I greatly appreciate your service. And just want to say thank you. Thank you for your service. As we talk about this very heavy subject, war. In our human history, it's just full of different stories of war. You know, Jesus talked about this, right? In the Bible, he talked about this. Towards the end of the world, what's going to happen? We'll hear the rumors of wars. And actually, what we see now is not just rumors of wars, right? We actually see wars out there. We see people are going through very, very difficult times in different regions of the world. We know several African countries have wars and still having some kind of conflict over there, Middle East. You know, our prayers goes to those people who are struggling. We have, European countries, they have stories of wars in the past, and some of them are still struggling with this terrorism. What about Asia? World War II, Pacific War, we have this horrendous experience in the past. The United States is not exception for that. Wars, this tragic thing that we have to witness. Somehow many Christians are kind of having difficult time to process that war thing. And we also, recently we saw this wonderful story of an Adventist man, Desmond Doss. And many of you heard the story. And that's not the end of the story. Many of the Adventist members in the world, World War I, World War II, many different regions, civil war here in the United States, many of Christians and the Adventists, we have this struggle. What do we do with that? How do we respond and react to the wars? This is not the foreign story to me. I have a classmate from college. All South Korean male citizens, we have duty to serve military service for 2 years. And everyone has to go. And my friends, they went there. And we always have these two groups. One group, this is just training, just for 2 years. Let's just go through this as soon as possible. Let's just think done and forget about it. The other group of friends, they went to the boot camp and they just could not process of this thinking. How can I bear arms? They requested to the government, we're not against this idea. There's a history in the United States, our ally, they allow them to, many people to have this opportunity to serve country without bearing arms. So South Korean government, please let us have this. Let us serve our country, but we are not comfortable, we're not comfortable to carry and bear arms. South Korean government went back to them saying, no, we cannot respect your request. It's because we are at war. No. My friends, they were convicted and charged, and they had to serve 2-year term in prison. So it's really my friend's story. So when they applied job to be a pastor and they run this background check, and he came out, they served 2 years in the prison, and somehow they take it as a kind of, wow, I did this in my life. But this is struggle. What about our veterans here in the United States? How many of you heard this story like veterans who are struggling with PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder? They have these bad dreams, emotionally stressed, many of suicidal thoughts going on. And people say, a lot of researchers, they came out with the research, they say, maybe because a lot of things that they have seen, but also it's related to, we call moral injury. So in the combat situation, somehow you are required to do something that normally considered as not right. And here we have this dilemma. A lot of people have this struggle. What do we do with this commandment? Thou shalt not kill. Or some people think or interpret this as thou shalt not murder. I'm not going to talk about this for my sermon, but what I'm saying is the struggle is real. And people are struggling with that. And all of us, we have this question. For how long? For how long do we have to suffer for these wars around us? So here's the question. Why do we have to keep fighting for freedom? Why are we in a situation where we have to fight for freedom? This is serious thing that we have to deal with, but somehow we're in the situation where we cannot avoid wars, and somehow our Adventist Christians or Christians in general, we have to face this reality of war Even in the year of 2017, people are saying, our world is going to be a better place. We have a good technology where everything is going well. We'll fix this. Globalization, we'll come together. We'll fix things. We'll have peace together. But, a lot of historians, European historians, who researched the World War I, they said it was a time after industrialization, and people thought everything's going to be well, and everyone thought, the Europe will be the good place to live in the future. But historians said, somehow all the European countries, they were sleepwalking into the World War, and people never thought they're going to have war. In the Bible, there are many themes. There are many different themes, but there's one theme in particular that I always see it and I always thought it's kind of interesting, which is rescue mission. A lot of stories in the Bible, they're talking about rescuing people out of something or captives or oppressions that they were in. Let me give you some example. What about Moses? Do you agree with that? Like Moses, he was sent to the Hebrews in Egypt, and he was called by God to deliver the message to Pharaoh, saying what? Let my people go. They were under oppression for a long time, and it was God's message for Pharaoh and his people saying, you guys should come out of this land to be free. What about stories like Jubilee every 70 years? Like there is a system where people somehow get into this situation where they have to serve their master as a slave or servant. But every time when they have Jubilee, everyone's supposed to be going to be free. What about stories like Gideon? Like he was sent by God and appointed by God to free the Israelites from the oppression of Midianites. What about David? That he went out to sea dealing with situation with Philistines, and all of a sudden his town, the city of Ziklag, that Amalekites came and they took all the wives, all the possession, all the goods, they took everything, and they were taking all of those as a captive to their land. And back in those days, as we know, ancient days, if you are captive like that, either they will kill you, or what's going to happen? They will make you a slave. Either sell you, or you have to serve them. So David asked the Lord, and Lord said, go ahead and pursue them. And David was able to get all these people back, set them free. And this is the kind of common theme of the Bible, like God called people out of the situation, God rescued them, and somehow these people who are called by God, they did not plan to raging war, but somehow they have to face this war, go after the enemy, and free people. Facing this war and warfare is not an old story. It has been there, and now we're still struggling with that. Let me give you one example, a good story from the Bible. Let's go to Genesis chapter 11. Genesis chapter 11. So one example of a good rescue mission is the story of Abraham. Story of Abraham. And it starts from chapter 12, verse 1. It says this, now the Lord has said to Abraham, get out of your country, from your family, and from your father's house, to a land that I will show you. I will make you a great nation. I will bless you and make you name great. And you shall be a blessing. So do you see that Abraham was called out of his father's house, called out of where he was staying to go to a place where God wanted him to be. But we have to kind of look into where he's from, where he used to live, and why God called him out from that land. Let's just go back a little bit to backward in chapter 11, verse 27. Genesis chapter 11, 27 says this. This is the genealogy of Terah. Terah begot Abraham. So Terah is the father of Abraham, right? And it says this, the Haran died before his father Terah, so he lost his son, in his native land in Ur, in the Chaldeans. And thank God for these archaeologists, they figure out this. The city Ur, the region of Chaldeans, are in the region of Babylon. And if we read Joshua chapter 24, when God was explaining about the situation of Abraham, he says, Terah, the father of Abraham, he worshipped idol gods when they were in the land of Chaldeans. So Abraham and his whole entire family, they were called out from Babylon. They were called out from the land of Chaldeans. They were called out and directed to go to the promised land. And then we have this story in chapter 14. In chapter 14, we have this story. You know who Lot is, right? There's Abraham and his brother's son Lot came out with Abraham, and they lived together, and they were kind of blessed so much. They have a lot of flocks and lambs and sheep that all these things were in the very small, limited space. And the servants were kind of fighting. The servants of Lot, servants of Abraham, they were kind of fighting. And Abraham and Lot, they sat down and they talked about it. You know, maybe this land where we're staying is not really big enough for us. Maybe we should separate. Maybe we have to separate. So Abraham talked to Lot, you know, if you want to go to left, I will go right. If you want to go right, I will go to left. So pick wherever you want to go. And Lot, he chose to go to the city called Sodom, right? You know the story. The Lot was in Sodom, and Abraham, he went to this open plain field. And Sodom and Gomorrah, the kings, they had this alliance. And they used to serve another alliance, multiple kings, by giving them some kind of gifts every year. About 13, 14 years later, the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah said, you know what? We don't need them. We're not going to respect this relationship. We'll just go our own. And those multiple kings alliance, they say, you know what? I will show you guys how to respect. So they waged the war. They invaded their land. Let's go to Genesis chapter 14. Genesis chapter 14 and verse 10. Now the valley of Siddim was full of aspen pits, and the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah fled. So they lost the battle. They were running away. Some fell there, and the remainder fled to mountains. Then they took all the goods of Sodom and Gomorrah and their provisions and went their way. They also took Lot, Abraham's brother's son who dwelt in Sodom, and his good, and departed. So here's a situation where Abraham's brother's son, his relative, Lot was taken by these kings away from the city where he used to live to be a captive. And verse 13, it says, the one who fled escaped, came and told Abraham, and Abraham was told what was happening. What was happening? He was saying, you know, Lot was taken by these kings and he's away. And verse 14, now when Abraham heard that his brother was taken captive, he armed his 318 trained servants who were born in his own house and went in pursuit as far as Dan, which is the north side. He divided his forces against them by night, and he and his servants attacked them and pursued them as far as Hova, which is north of Damascus, to the region of Syria these days. So he brought back all the goods and brought back his brother Lot and his goods, as well as the women and the people. And the king of Sodom went out to him at the valley of Sava. And everyone was so happy. But this is one great example. Abraham, he used to live in the land of Babylon, and he was called out of Babylon. Do you see this connection? Do you see this similar story going on in the book of Revelation? And when we're talking about three angels, come out of Babylon, come out of Babylon. Somehow we see this similarity. Abraham was called out of the world, the region of Chaldeans, the region of Babylon. He was sent to the promised land, Canaan. And now he is pursuing to enemies to rescue his own brother and for other people. This rescue theme that we can find from the story of Abraham. There's another example that I can show you. Book of Joshua. Let's go to book of Joshua. Let's go to book of Joshua chapter 9. And Joshua, the Israelites, they were able to go into the promised land. They crossed the river, Jordan River. What was the first city that they have to face in the promised land? Jericho, right. They went to Jericho first time, and it was basically, to me, this is a story. They were just walking around the city several times. It was basically God. God fought the war against people in Jericho. It was not Israelites did anything. It was God fighting against them. And what was the second city that they had to fight? Yes, that's right. And they somehow underestimate them, and they went up to this city without knowing what was really going on. And they were defeated, but at the end, they were able to conquer the city Ai. And when people in that region, when they heard what was happening in Jericho and Ai, people were like, wow, these people, they were able to get out of Egypt. Now they traveled through the wilderness, and now they crossed the river of Jordan, and now they conquered Jericho, the city Ai. Who's going to be the next? And people were kind of afraid, what do we do with that? And here we have this people called Gibeonites. They were thinking, what do we do with that? And they decided, you know what? Why don't we go to this people of Israel and make a treaty, like make peace with them? And they realized that they're not going to do that if they know that these people, the Gibeonites, are somewhere nearby. So they wanted to kind of trick the Israelites by wearing clothes that's really worn out, and they brought this food and drinks has kind of expired. Like all these things look like they traveled far, far from where they are. Israelites, they somehow didn't ask God. They were saying, yeah, we can make peace with you guys. And they made peace with these people. And later they found out, oh, they're not far from here. So that's the kind of background. But let's go to Joshua chapter 10. Joshua chapter 10 has this story that these Gibeonites, when they make this peace with the Israelites, the other kings around the region, they felt like threatened by these people. Let's go to Joshua chapter 10. Now it came to pass when Adonizedek, the king of Jerusalem, heard how Joshua had taken Ai and had utterly destroyed, as he had done to Jericho and its kings. So he had done to Ai and its king, and how the inhabitants of Gibeon had made peace with Israel were among them. So people were threatened by this. One of them somehow betrayed to go to the side of Israel. They were like, maybe we should go and fight against them. So here in verse 4 says, "Come up to me and help me. We may attack Gibeon, for it has made peace with Joshua, with the children of Israel." So therefore, five kings, they came together to attack the Gibeonites. And Gibeonites, they sent a message to Joshua right away. In verse 6, Gibeon sent to Joshua at the camp of Gilgal, saying, "Do not forsake your servants. Come up to us quickly. Save us and help us, for all the kings of Amorites who dwell in the mountains have gathered together against us." So here's the situation. Although Joshua, he did not initiate a war against those people, but somehow the group of people who are against God's people, they were attacking one of the group who made peace with God's people. And Joshua had to fight against them. But it was God actually fought with them. In verse 8, the Lord said to Joshua, "Do not fear them, for I have delivered them into your hand. Not a man of them shall stand before you." And we know this story. When they went out to fight, the sun stayed. In same chapter in verse 12, Joshua said, "Sun, stand still over Gibeon, and moon, just stay there." In verse 13, the sun stood still and moon stopped till the people had revenge upon their enemies. Is this not written in the book of Joshua? So the sun stood still in the midst of heaven and did not hasten to go down. So we see this story that God and God's people were fighting against these people who try to oppress and who try to take the freedom out of the hand of these people. This is not the old story. They had to face it. God's people had to fight against the enemies for freedom. Another example that I can find is Daniel chapter 9. Do you love the book of Daniel? Daniel has a wonderful, wonderful message in it. Daniel chapter 9. Daniel chapter 9 is very, very interesting. Daniel chapter 9 starts with the story where Daniel saw the vision. Daniel was there. Do you know where Daniel was when he was writing the book of Daniel? Where was he? Was he in Jerusalem? No, he was in captives. He was in Persia at that time. He was captive to Babylon, and he was in Persia at that time. And in chapter 9 it says this: "In the first year of Darius, the son of Ahasuerus, the lineage of the Medes, who was made king over the realm of Chaldeans." We have this same term appear once again. Abraham was called out from the region of Chaldeans, the land of Babylon, and Israelites, the people of God, was captives once again in Babylon, and God was showing Daniel about his plan to rescue him out of Babylon. In verse 2, in chapter 9, book of Daniel says this: "In the first year of his region, I, Daniel, understood by the books the number of the years specified by the word of the Lord through Jeremiah." In Jeremiah chapter 25, Lord said, after 70 years, you will come back. Jerusalem will be restored. And Daniel, when he saw this, he immediately knelt down and he prayed. And he prayed, not only just praying for, "Lord, thank you for showing this," but he was praying to repent, and he also was praying for the people of God as intercessory prayer. "Lord, please forgive our people. Forgive our people." And let's go to verse 20 in Daniel chapter 9. It says this: "Now while I was speaking and praying and confessing my sin, the sin of my people Israel, and presenting my supplication before the Lord my God, for holy mountain of my God. Yes, while I was speaking in prayer, the man Gabriel, whom I had seen in the vision at the beginning." So Daniel chapter 7, Daniel chapter 8, Daniel saw the visions, right? Gabriel showed himself again. And verse 22, he informed me and talked with me, said, "O Daniel, I have now come forth to give you skill to understand. At the beginning of your supplications, and the command went out, and I have come to tell you, for you are greatly beloved. Therefore, consider the matter and understand the vision." When Daniel prayed, I love this word. When Daniel prayed, God did not wait until he finished his prayer. When Daniel prayed, God sent Gabriel even before he finished his prayer. And he said, "Go to Daniel and tell him how I love him." And not just that, Daniel was able to understand the vision. And God actually unpacked the plan of salvation, the rescue mission. Not only the 70 weeks, 70 years that Israelites will be under Babylon and Persia. But God said, "You know what? I'm going to show you more. I'm going to show you more than just the rescue mission for the Israelites. But I am going to show you more. I'm going to show you the plan of salvation of entire human being." When he prayed. And here's the picture. Can I show the PowerPoint there? So just look at this PowerPoint slide as we read verses from 24. 70 weeks are determined. You just heard 70 years. The Israelites will be free, going back. Everything will be restored. But let me show you more. God said 70 weeks are determined. In the prophecy, this period of time represents the time God had set for the Israelites. And this time is very symbolic. The symbolic prophetic year is translated into a literal year. We call it day-year principle. And 70 weeks are determined for your people, for your holy city, to finish in transgression, to make an end of sins, to make reconciliation for iniquity, to bring an everlasting righteousness, to seal up vision and prophecy, and to anoint the Most High. So God showed them, after 70 years, when Israelites, when Jerusalem, when the sanctuary is restored, I'm going to show you when it's going to be the Messiah come, and you will see this prophecy so that you will understand this rescue mission designed by God. In verse 25, "Know therefore, understand that from going forth of the command to restore the build Jerusalem until Messiah the Prince, there shall be 7 weeks and 72 weeks." And here's the picture that you see here. So here we have 79 weeks, which is 483 days. In the prophecy, it turned into 483 years. And God is basically saying, after about 49 years, all Jerusalem sanctuary will be restored. And after 69 weeks, it's going to be 483 years. Around that time, you will see the Messiah who will start ministry. Let's go back to verse 24. "The street shall be built again, and the wall, and even in troublesome times." There will be difficult times as you build Jerusalem, as we restore the sanctuary, but it will be finished. And verse 26, "And after 62 weeks, the time, and adding 7 weeks before, so 69 weeks, Messiah will be cut up, but not for himself. The people of Prince who is to come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary." And we all know that year AD 27, Jesus was baptized, and he started ministry. And at the end, AD 70, Jerusalem and the sanctuary was destroyed once again. All this prophecy was fulfilled. But God was showing Daniel about his rescue plan for entire humanity by saying Jesus will be there. Let's go back to this verse. 27, "He shall confirm a covenant with many for 1 week. But in the middle of the week, he shall bring an end to sacrifice and offering, In the Old Testament time, Jesus showed the Moses by you have to make this sanctuary, all this sacrifice was built to teach Israelites about this plan of salvation. And at this, when Jesus died on the cross, what happened in the sanctuary? What happened in the sanctuary when he died on the cross? The veil was torn, right? We know that we don't need the sacrifice anymore because Jesus Christ himself, he died for us so that we can be free. So this 70-year prophecy, when Daniel was so impressed, but right after that, God said, that's not enough. You have to know more about this plan because I am not only going to restore Israelites, but I'm going to restore entire human being by sending Jesus Christ, who will be died for you. When Jesus came, according to this plan, people didn't like him. Some people really didn't like Jesus. Let's go to John chapter 8. John chapter 8 has a very, very interesting story. John chapter 8, it starts with the story. The woman was caught at the action of adultery. And we know this was a kind of trap. But Jesus was at the temple, was teaching the people, and people took this woman and they dragged them in front of Jesus saying, Moses said, if someone is doing this bad thing, we should stone her. What do you have to say about it? And Jesus said, if anyone who never ever committed sin in your life, you go ahead, stone her first. And people realized, and Jesus was writing something on the ground they saw, and everyone realized, that's not me. And they left. And these people were kind of really curious. Who is this guy? Who had this authority? What kind of person he is? And how can he say things like that? So they asked him questions. They said, Moses said we have to bring 2 witnesses to make it true, but you do not have any witnesses around. How can we trust you are true? And Jesus said, you need 2 witnesses. It's because you are under the sin. But I do not need witnesses because I am the truth. I do not need witnesses to make my case true. It's because I am the truth. And people were fascinating. Oh, what are you talking about? And let's go to verse 31. It was this. In chapter 8, John chapter 8, verse 31, it says this. Then Jesus says to those 2 Jews who believed him, said, if you abide in my word, you are my disciples indeed. Amen. And you shall know the truth. And he said something very interesting. He said, and the truth shall make you, what does it say? The truth shall make you free. When people heard about this and they say, free from what? Keep reading, verse 33. They answered him, we are Abraham's descendants and have never been in bondage to anyone. How can you say you will be made free? Well, to me, it's not true because they were bondage to many things, but they were like, what are you talking about? I don't really understand what you're talking about. And Jesus said in verse 34, Jesus said this, Jesus answered them, most assuredly I say to you, whoever commits sin is a slave of sin. Jesus is saying, I'm not talking about Abraham. What he's talking about is that if you don't believe me, or if you don't believe my sacrifice, you will be still under the sin and you are the slaves of sin. In verse 35, a slave does not abide in the house forever, but the Son abides forever. Therefore, If the Son makes you free, you shall be free indeed. Jesus said, the truth make you free. If we don't believe in Jesus, if we don't know about Jesus, we are still under the sin. We are still under the sin. We are slaves to sin. But Jesus said, if you believe in me, if you believe in my rescue plan, if you follow me as my disciple, you are free. It's not because you are just free, it's because I take you, I rescue you. It was a very interesting thought. In Matthew chapter 14, I saw this as a very interesting story relating to this. Before Jesus was crucified, with his disciple, they went to the Garden of Gethsemane. And he prayed there, right? In the Garden of Gethsemane, he prayed there. In Mark chapter 14, verse 32 says this. Then they came to a place which was named Gethsemane, and he said to his disciples, sit there while I pray. And he took Peter, James, and John with him, and he began to be troubled and deeply distressed. Here's a two word that I would like to share with you. When Jesus was praying, when Jesus was fighting the fight for your freedom, he was distressed and he was troubled because the fight was not easy. He was struggling, he was distressed, he was troubled, and he was praying. He said to them, my soul is, here's Jesus saying, my soul is exceedingly sorrowful, even to death. Stay here and watch. And he went a little further and fell on the ground and prayed, and if it were possible, the hour might pass from him. In verse 36, I want to talk about this verse 36. He said this famous prayer, Abba, Father, all things are possible for you. And he said, take this cup away from me. Can you imagine that? The creator of the universe, he just knelt down in the Garden of Gethsemane, bearing all this burden of sin to make all of us, me and you, to free. And he was fighting this fight. It was so troublesome. He was so disturbed, discouraged, and he had to go through, he said in his word, he was exceedingly sorrowful because he knows what's going to happen, what he has to face after this. And he was just urging this prayer, Lord, Father, if you can, I know if it is possible, take this cup away from me. To me, it's like, Lord, Father, do we really have to do this? We have this creating power. Maybe these people don't have any hope in the future. Can we just and then restart? Do I really go through this? But here's the word of Jesus. In verse 36, at the end, he said, not what I will. But what did he say? What you will. He knew the consequence. But he loves you and me so much that he was willing to go to the cross and die for you. But the fight was so vicious. The fight was not easy. He knew what he has to face, but he went there. It's because he loves you so much. This is the map before Korean War. As you see, Korean Peninsula was divided into two, North Korea and South Korea. In June, in a long weekend like this, on Sunday, early in the morning, North Korean troops, they crossed the line with the support of Russia and China. They invaded South Korea. Korea was not ready for war like that. North Korean troops were so ready. They've been preparing this war for a long time. So it was just so easy for them to just sweep through the territory of South Korea. And a few days later, map changed to like this. Only the small part of South Korea was still under control of South Korea, but all of everything was under the influence of North Korea. To me, it was very desperate situation. I mean, almost the time to give up in a situation like that. There was a time when UN and many other countries decided to go war against North Korea. And General MacArthur was in Japan at the time, and he was appointed to lead out UN troops. And he thought about this situation. How can we reverse this situation? It's just so difficult. This momentum of war was under control of North Korean troops. How do we get this thing done, reverse? And he said, you know what, maybe we have to cut this line here. This city called Incheon. He said, maybe we should land there to cut the supply line of North Korea so that we can have a good chance to fight against them. But he said, if we fail, landing on this shore, Korea is gone. So he took it very seriously. So he made a plan. And he realized there are so many spies around, the information leaks over there, and he didn't want the North Koreans to know about their plan, of course. So he had to come up with a plan we call decoy land operation. This was the spot. In order to confuse North Korean, he said, we have to have another decoy operation over here. He prepared this plan, and he needed volunteers to go to this shore. To confuse North Koreans by thinking, oh, they are trying to land this spot. No volunteers, but at the end, several hundred teenagers, high school students, they volunteered. They went through training, very short days, and they were sent to this spot. When they tried to land that spot, North Korean troops, they were confused. They thought all this U.S. troop will be landing over here. So they moved all these troops over there. And that made the operation Incheon landed successful. And because of that, I'm here. Those people who landed this side, almost everyone's killed. They knew the consequence, but they went there to fight for my freedom. Jesus fought this vicious fight for your freedom. This fight is still going on, still raging, and we see this war going on, and we still see, we struggle. There are persecutions out there, and this is not something new. Let's go to Revelation chapter 12. It says this. Revelation chapter 12, verse 13 says this. Now when the dragon, we know this Satan, dragon saw that he had been cast to the earth from heaven, he persecuted the women, the God's people, who gave birth to a male child, which is Jesus Christ. But woman was given 2 wings, a great eagle, that she might fly into the wilderness. It's basically the picture of God leading Israelites to the wilderness, kind of take care of them. At the same time, the same picture in the medieval period when God's people were spared by special plan by God. Where she is nourished for a time and times and a half time from the presence of the serpent. So the serpent spewed water out of his mouth like a flood after the woman, that he might cause her to carry it away by the flood. You know, Satan is trying to imitate God's flood by destroying God's people. But it didn't happen that way. The earth helped, and the earth opened its mouth and swallowed up the flood which the dragon had spewed out of his mouth. And verse 17, this is the picture. This is the verse that we have to remember very carefully. Verse 17 says this, and the dragon was enraged with the women, God's people, and he went to make war with the rest of her offspring who kept the commandments of God and have the testimony of Jesus Christ. If you are persecuted, if you feel like you are in the war against Satan, this is what it is. It is Satan is trying to enrage war to keep us under the slavery of sin. But Jesus Christ, He went to the cross and He died for you and me so that we can enjoy this freedom from sins. In Revelation chapter 7, it talks about the 144,000. It's like a military people, the 12 tribes, and each one has this people who are walking to a certain direction. In Revelation chapter 7:14, we have this famous verse says, these are they who came out from great tribulation, and they washed their robes in the blood of the Lamb. You are free. All of you are free. It's because of Jesus. You are free because Jesus thought they were. You are free is because Jesus died on the cross. And the same war is still raging in you, in your life, in your heart. But remember this. We are the people who walked out of tribulation by the power of Jesus Christ. And He promised us this victory. Paul said, fight a good fight. And I believe all of us, we can be victorious end of this history as we trust, as we believe in Jesus Christ. If you believe in that victory, why don't we all stand up and sing our closing song, Redeemed. We thank you for your love and mercy. We thank you for your love to fight for our ultimate freedom. Without your sacrifice, we can have hope. We are utterly lost under the slavery of sins. But you freed us from sin, the ultimate bondage of sins. Lord, as you fought that fight so boldly for our freedom, we want to fight as well in this fight with your strength and honor. Help us to have a strength to fight this war against Satan, and help us to be faithful. Also want to lift up our veterans' families. They sacrifice so much for our freedom. Lord, please bless them and comfort them. Lord, once again, help us to remember your promise of hope and victory at the end. Pray in Jesus' name. Amen.